Hi, I'm Gina, creator and host of Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that is designed to have real talk around all things midlife and strategies to help us live a more vibrant second half. It is my deepest desire to help other people shift the conversation toward empowerment, toward vibrancy, toward excitement about what life has for us and what we can bring to the world, how we can each individually shine our light. So I invite you to grab a cup of something wonderful, to join me each week or when you can, and join me in my living room to have these conversations. And if you are enjoying this, please take the time to subscribe wherever you listen, rate my podcast, and share the episodes that help you, the episodes that encourage you. Let's build this community together. Welcome to my tribe. I'm so grateful you're here. Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that helps you navigate the challenges and changes of midlife and live a more vibrant second half. Today, I'm going to be talking to all my single ladies. I'm going to be talking to two women who have written the guidebook to help single women survive and thrive beyond the tenets of making money last. They focus on how to help you live well on one income and overcome the challenges that come with that. My guests today are journalist Margaret-Price and financial planner Jill-Gianola. They are co-authors of the book, Single Women and Money, How to Live Well on Your Income. Jill, Peggy, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Excellent. Now, I would love to have you share with my audience how you came to, get to know each other, how you came to this specific mission and message, and why this book.
I'll start out, if you don't mind. This is Peggy Price. Over the years, living in New York City, there are many women who are either never married, single, or widowed or divorced. And I had noticed increasingly that their financial situation and their ability to spend money, save money, and have the things that they wanted was more constrained than those of married couples with two incomes. And it became clear that there was a gulf in the almost in the ability to have the lifestyle that single women wanted. There was clearly a noticeable financial difference in the well-being financially of dual earning couples and people who were, especially women, who were surviving on one income. So, that difference between the groups became more and more pronounced as these women grew older, and great fear, especially among people who were living alone, about how to make their money survive long term. And the fear grew year by year as they approached their 50s, their 60s, and beyond. And it was quite clear to me as a journalist that not enough was being said about that, certainly not enough in the media. And beyond in social circles, that there was that single women had unique financial issues that were putting them at a disadvantage versus society overall. So I felt that this was a topic that needed to be addressed broadly. I met Jill-Gianola and learned that this was a topic of great interest to her. So we decided we would pair up and do a book.
That's fantastic. Jill, how about you?
Yes, and I came to a similar conclusion in my work as a financial planner. I would notice that my single women clients, even though we constructed a plan, it didn't take much to kind of rock them back on their heels. It was a disability, an unexpected big expense, loss of a job, and they didn't have that second income to shore them up. They were doing this all on their own. And it meant that they had to be even more careful planners. They had to construct their own social safety net. It took a lot more planning to kind of solidify their financial security. And it can happen. It just takes a lot more thought and flexibility, frankly. And as Peggy said, the fact that single women kind of get a double whammy because they tend to earn less than men. They tend to live longer too. So you have to have more money to sustain you for all those years. And they're doing it on one income. And they have fewer choices when it comes to Social Security, taxes. They're kind of given a raw deal, and society seems to have ignored that. So we thought it was time to write a book, both to help single women solidify their finances, give them a nice step-by-step guide, but also call it society's attention to the fact that these 66 million single women are not getting much of a break.
So tell me a little bit about how your book helps women. What are the strategies or the tenets that you share that give them that power? Because there are people in my audience, I'm sure, that fit this. And so I'd love to have you encourage them, being, like you said, kind of a minority group.
The book does a couple of main things. Individually, it addresses issues ranging from getting out of debt, staying out of debt, to saving for retirement. How do you do this? How do you invest? What do you invest in to some extent? And how do you plan for retirement? When and how and what should you do about estate planning, including providing for your health care, power of attorney, your financial power of attorney, your will, so the full range of specific issues. Beyond that, we have a chapter in the book called Age Matters, and in this we cover the various age blocks of adult women, from younger women to middle-aged women to retirees, what they can expect in terms of expenses and income at the various age groups, enabling them not only to see what they should be expecting now, but what they should be planning for in terms of expenses in the future. And we also provide them with ways that they could tips on ways they could save. We have a checklist also of the different kinds of major issues that the different categories of single women individually, such as divorcees, widows, and women who haven't married, a checklist of what they need to be specifically aware of and do. And so it gives you, it's not only a guidepost to your life today, but also a peek into what you can expect down the road. And ultimately, what your choices are in old age in terms of different areas, including and especially your housing situation, and who might be there to take care of you in your old age and handle aspects of your care and finances if you become unable to do so yourself.
Let's talk a little bit about that financial side. Let's talk about what it looks like to start that journey. What are some steps that women can begin to take? Because I'm sure it's a long game.
It is a long game. And my message is it's never too late. I think sometimes we get to a certain point in life and we think, I should have done better. ideally, we should have all saved more earlier on. We should have all put more into retirement funds. But that's shoulda, coulda, and I don't want to fixate, in the rearview mirror. So we talk a lot in our book about specific steps you can take now. It's never too late. So, for example, Social Security can be a huge part of your retirement, and it may be one of the biggest decisions you make. When do you start taking your benefits? It used to be that Social Security was just one kind of leg in the retirement stool that also included a pension and your savings. But increasingly, Social Security has become a huge part, especially for single women. There was a study that reported that over half of single retired women depended on Social Security for almost their entire retirement income. And when you think that an average Social Security check is about $1,400, that's not living high on the hog in retirement. So we have a whole chapter devoted to Social Security because you have some choices about when to take your benefit, and you can get a 30-40% higher benefit if you delay taking your benefits. That means you have to have the money to pay the bills in the meantime. And so we talk about different ways to kind of bridge that gap. Widows in particular have some choices when it comes to Social Security. You can take your benefit now and then switch to your deceased husband's benefit or deceased spouse's benefit, or vice versa. So we try to address the issue and then give women readers really step by step of how do you approach this, how do you get the information you need, and what can you do to make the best decision for you.
Fantastic. So what I hear you saying is it really is individual from person to person. Do you have some basic financial tenets that you could share?
Some of the key points that we want to stress that you may not always hear so much about, just starting for a second with the budgeting process. And by the way, the budgeting changes, as we were saying before. As you age, you are spending money differently in different ways depending on your needs. When you're 20-something, for example, you might have to factor student loans into your budget, whereas when you're 50, it's probably more to do with a bigger ticket items such as housing and purchasing cars and needing to put more money into saving for retirement to catch up. And so you could see that budgeting changes over time, which is important to remember. But there's something about budgeting that we like to stress, which is single women make less money than men overall. But their expenses aren't necessarily less. For example, they pay the same price as everyone else in rent for the same square footage. Their food costs the same. So they tend to have a lot less money than many other people to spend. However, when you're making out your budget, you shouldn't deprive yourself at all. You should really understand what's extremely important to you and make provisions for that in your budget, even if it isn't the basics such as food, clothing, and shelter. For example, we noted in our book a story of a woman who decided that having flowers around the house was extremely important to her. So she budgeted for having flowers. In order to afford that, she would cut out eating out as often as she might like. And in this way, she made sure that the budget wasn't making her feel badly or as I said, deprived or anything. So it's very important to structure a budget around your income and assets. And so avoid overspending, but be very conscious of the things that are most important to you and make sure to include it in your budget. One other point I'm going to make before Jill speaks is the extreme importance, especially for single women of estate planning, and that is a scary name. It doesn't mean your mansion in the Hamptons. It means your assets. How do you want to disperse your assets? We have data showing that I think it was only 32% of adults actually have a will, but that's not even to us the most important part of the estate planning. The more important parts of estate planning are making sure you have a designee who is your financial power of attorney, and also a designee who is your healthcare proxy in case something happens to you while you're alive. The will speaks to what happens to your assets when you're not alive. But it's extremely important, perhaps even more important, that you provide for yourself while you are alive. And if you don't have a spouse, then who can you be sure is going to take care of you if you're, say, in the hospital in a coma? And this is not just for people in their 80s. Someone who is 20 can get into a severe car accident. It can happen when you're 55. You can find yourself in a precarious position at any age. But if you're single and you don't have someone right there who can be called upon to help you, what does happen? So it's vital to be sure that you've taken care of you've put together an estate plan, especially picking the healthcare, financial and healthcare power of attorney, and consulting with this person, make sure they're willing to do it, but have it in place, and make sure someone knows where it is to protect yourself, especially when you're alive.
We did that as a family a year ago, November, because I just had this gut feeling that needed to be done. And my father-in-law had died suddenly, and we were caring for, if you will, my mother-in-law. And you talk about the power of attorney, and I want to give the caregiver's perspective of the power of attorney. I was acting as her medical advocate. I was doing all of her medical things, taking her to all the doctors, and my husband was doing all of the financial stuff. So we were doing it, and he got his name on the accounts. But when you have the power of attorney, it gives you the legal right to have access to and ask questions and get answers for. So when we got all of that done, the will, the power of attorney, we did it for us, for my mom, and for my mother-in-law. Basically, when the very next year, my mother-in-law declined, I was able to do everything I needed to do for her from a distance, because I was actually traveling when she started to decline. And the doctors, they do have to tell you. I don't know how else to put it. It's like the power of attorney gives you the ability to stand in for them and protect them. So definitely, if you don't have a power of attorney, get one, because all I had to do was to say to them, I'm her medical power of attorney. Or my husband would say, I'm the financial power of attorney. And it removed a lot of the difficulties that would have been in place had we not done that. So Peggy, I'm totally in agreement with you. That made things so much easier for us in the process of planning her funeral, taking care of everything, because we had a legal piece of paper that said we had the right to be involved in those things. So I'm just supporting what you say from our life experience. It made a huge difference for us, for sure.
Yes, I agree. If you're married, there's a presumption that maybe the spouse can step in for you and speak on your behalf. But when you're not married, you have to choose someone and you have to put it in writing. And your experience, Gina, is so helpful because it helped both you and your mother-in-law. Your mother-in-law was able to have someone whom she trusted speak on her behalf, and you had the power to jump in and help. So it's both ways. And as Peggy said, it's not just for an 80-year-old. It's at any age. Get those documents, get them in place, review them every few years. It's a vital part of your own financial security. If you don't, the courts will name someone else to speak on your behalf, and it may not be the person that you had in mind.
Mm.
So make it easier for yourself and for others to do that. I was also going to mention that if one of the things I've noticed working with women who come into my office, often they are very good savers. They've been putting money into a savings account for years and years, and they've built up a nice balance, but they're really timid about exploring other options for investments. They understand bank accounts, they understand CDs, but the idea of investing in that wild world out there is just a little scary. And as a result, they never grow their nest egg. You know, they earn a bit of interest and then inflation takes that away. And then they earn some interest and a step back again. And so one of my messages and one of the things I work with these single women is on investing part of that, not all of it. We're not going to put 100% of it into the stock market, but maybe half over time into the stock market so you could actually grow that nest egg that has to last, because your retirement could last for 30 years easily. So you need to grow it. You can't just put, cans of applesauce in the cupboard for your retirement. You have to plant some apple trees to get you some crops that you can rely on. So that's one of the things. And one of the ways that is particularly attractive to many women is to invest in what are called ESG investments, environmental, social, and governmental. They're often called socially responsible investments. Several women that I've worked with have said, now that makes sense to me. If I can invest in a way that supports my own values, whether it be the environment, social causes. I have a client who is very intent on making sure that none of her investments harm animals, if at all possible. Then that kind of lights a light bulb and says, I get it. This is great. And we have a chapter in our book about how to get involved in ESG investing that I think could give you kind of a step-by-step guide to how to get into that if you're interested.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Let me just say that broadly, one of the aids that Single Women and Money, our book, provide is that I find that women who are living alone can be very fearful about their present and their future, and who is going to be there for them, and what the future holds. How will they handle problems that come up? It's kind of scary to be alone and not have someone. You're not brought up to live alone. You're brought up with a family. Usually you turn to your parents growing up. They're in school, there are teachers. And if you're suddenly off on your own, it's very hard. No matter what age you are, it's very hard to know where to turn and what decisions to make. Decision making is tougher when you make it all by yourself. And I don't understand why society doesn't have more empathy with single women generally. And so we do have a chapter in our book that talks about the specific needs of single women, especially financially, but it's also a social issue in that society, unfortunately, continues to see itself as a couples-oriented arrangement. And somehow, if you fail to be in a couple, that you are, that there's something amiss. Perhaps there's something wrong with you even, that you should be out hunting for a partner. And that therefore there's less sympathy what is wrong with you if you can't find a partner to share your life with. And I really feel the fundamental issue for women broadly is that they need, whether they're married, living with somebody, or on their own, they really need to understand that at some point that that relying on a couple is not adequate, that you really need to begin as soon as possible in your adult life to learn about decision making on your own. Finances is particularly hard for women across the board because they were not schooled in finances. Women have been brought up more or less to become eventually wives and mothers, and that perception hasn't drastically changed. So they're not taught about the basics of finance. Schools are slightly beginning to embrace the idea that people generally don't know enough about finance, but it's vitally important for people, males or females, especially if they are by themselves, to grasp the basics of finances, and because there isn't, unfortunately, societal appreciation for their plight and not the resources that single people need to feel comfortable with their life in the same manner that married couples do at least have, or partnered people do have someone else there to help them. And the ultimate message in this is that data show that single women, given the point that Jill made, women generally live longer than men, and that at some point in their adult life, just about all women will be single, be it in their early adult years, later in life, which is very common for them to be single, perhaps widowed or divorced if they ever were married. But the chances are that adult women will be single at some point in their life. And it's critical to have a grasp on what you would do, especially in the scary idea of having enough money to survive on your own. So I think that's, to me, I know it's to Jill, that's the essence of why we feel our book, Single Women and Money, is so vitally important for people who are single today, and for anyone who down the road, because if they're partnered today, there's a chance they won't be partnered later on.
It's interesting. My daughters are both single, and they have expressed that kind of frustration with the perspective of a single woman, especially at a certain age. I agree wholeheartedly that singleness is not as acceptable as it is as a single man. Somehow the woman bears that responsibility, right? To tie up those loose ends and be more complete. And I think my daughters and I just had a conversation, and they both have come to that place, and I've encouraged them to move forward with their life. Follow your dreams, accomplish your goals, do what you want to do, travel if you're going to travel. If he's going to come, he's going to come, but why wait, right? And they're both in that mindset of like, it is frustrating when all your friends are married but you, right? And this is another side of being a single woman. They don't think to include you in a way. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like my girls are at that phase where people are having children. So they always want to talk about having kids, or, maybe their husband's job or the decisions they're making because they do have a partner. So I hear what you're saying from my daughter's perspective, and I'm thinking to myself, if I have anybody who's listening to this, who's not over 50, this is still probably a very good resource to educate a woman of any age at singleness on how to start, because you say the earlier you start, you'll get better at it sooner. You set yourself up a little bit better the sooner you start. Would I be correct in assuming that your book could help any single woman?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's why we have a whole chapter on age matters of checklists for different ages. And I know some friends who have given our book to women who are engaged to be married with the idea that you still need to know this stuff, and you need to go into your marriage knowing personal finance and knowing how to make smart choices. But you're absolutely right. And I think that's part of the reason why society has been so slow to give a lending hand to single women, is because I think there's a perception the solution is staring you in the face. Get married. If you get married, you'll have the second income. Well, that's not for everyone. And we really are trying to urge financial institutions, government institutions, to really kind of be aware of the special needs and challenges that single women have. You know, single women have to jump higher and run faster to get to their goals. One of the biggest, most important problems that society could tackle would be the wage gap. The fact that women make about 82 cents for every dollar that men earn on average. That would help women, single or not, but particularly single women who are living on just this income. And there have been some movement in that direction, but there's still a lot of discrimination. There's still a lot of thinking that, well, you're going to get married soon, or you're going to have children soon, so the promotion doesn't come your way. Boardrooms are starting to crack open a bit, but jobs at the higher echelon are still mainly male dominated. So we would love to see some new legislation. There were a few things in the recent legislation that helped with childcare for single moms. It's kind of at the edges. We need to have a full frontal attack on the wage disparity. It's just not fair. You know, it's time to address this. It's been going on for much too long. And even women with the same education, the same experience, doing the same job, earning less, that's just not the kind of world we should be living in.
So what advice do you have for women who are afraid of finances and all of the things that comes with, right? The words investments, the words that they just are intimidating for some reason. What words of encouragement do you have?
I think that too often when we think of finance, we think of numbers and charts and graphs and gobbledygook lingo. And that's not what it's all about. What I would encourage women to do is to think about it in terms of what they want their life to be like. What are their goals? What do they want to achieve? What kind of a retirement would they like? Think in terms of stories. Tell yourself a story of, if everything went right, what would my life look like? And then work backwards to, what do you need to do to make that happen? So if it's, I would really love to quit my current job and get something that I liked more, but maybe paid less. How could I make that happen? What would I need to do to my budget? Would I have to downsize? Would that be worth it? So instead of thinking in terms of a particular number I have to hit, think in terms of what it is you want your life to look like, and then follow the steps that can get you there.
I'd like to add that, so let's say you're newly divorced, newly widowed. You're kind of in a shocking situation because suddenly your life and finances have changed dramatically. It can be quite frightening, but one thing to do, I think that doing some reading helps to get you started about which way to turn, that kind of thing. Also, talk to your friends. Just tell them how you're feeling and what you should do about this or that, or get their advice about something. And then if you want to, you can turn to a financial advisor or an attorney or whatever. But I think the best thing is to try to, if you can, sometimes if you're in a shocking situation, such as your partner just died or something, that you're stunned, but it's so helpful to try to talk just to a friend first, and then try to read a few things, to talk out your feelings, and to get some of their experiences and some of their insights, and then just try to inform yourself as much as you can, and then not do anything drastic like sell your house or whatever, but then move forward to do step by steps. First, you might want to take care of the bank accounts, make sure everything's in order that way. Then you might want to, talk to, if you have mutual funds or something, call your mutual fund company and see what changes, if anything, you want to make, and little steps by step. These kinds of things are particularly good for people who find themselves newly single. And as I said earlier, the chances are that people are going to find themselves in that position sooner or later. And I find for people without the experience of finance under their belt, just start by talking to your friends and read what you can. And, you might want to pick up our book, Single Women and Money, but in any case, do a little bit of research to the extent you're up for it, you can, but it'll get you going little by little, and you'll be able to pick up the pieces. And that also applies to people who haven't been married, but people who haven't been married are a little more used to handling money themselves and have gotten somewhat more accustomed to the idea, even if it's not a formal budget, that, okay, here's what I'm bringing in and here's what my rent is. At least they have a mental concept of what they can expend, and they're used to handling money by themselves. But it is a real shock for quite a few people who are suddenly single, and there are ways to handle it. And I would say, reach out.
I think suddenly retired too, like when you lose your job quickly, like a company merger or something like that, tends to happen to men and women somewhere around midlife, late 50s, early 60s. And I know, like with my mom, she's single and has been most of my life. You get, let's say, some kind of an increase, but then the rent goes up. So you're not necessarily getting anywhere. So you kind of have, in some situations, you might get a little increase in your income, but the cost of living is going up. And so there's, I think, probably a financial plan. How do you get ahead when you're at that paycheck to paycheck, month to month? How do you get ahead enough to begin to get a little bit of a what do you call it, like a leg up, so that you can have a little bit more room to breathe?
There's one other thing. I have a message for married women. So even today, hard to believe, but many married women, even younger ones, now leave the finances to the spouse, and therefore they're just not educating themselves. We feel that it would be really good if you have a partner, talk to them about the money, even if they're doing the PayPals and checks and, Venmos and all that. These chime in, see what they're doing, ask about where they've put their 401k and money, what funds they're in, and chat about finances. Women just don't talk about money with each other. It's really unfortunate, but they don't. But then talk to somebody who is into money, especially if you have a spouse, so that should something happen down the road, you're not in the dark the way my mom was when my father died, and she didn't even know the first step to take. That would be my advice, is participate in the household financing situation.
I've done it both ways. I used to do it all. And then, we do talk about things, but I've been thinking about that a lot. There's something about hitting this point of midlife that, your parents are aging and your kids are going through their own adult things. And you really begin to feel just everything feels so big, and you can sometimes feel like, oh, I'm behind. I should, it's too late, or I should have done this already. Or, I think there could be a lot of shame, guilt, shooting all over ourselves. What encouragement do you have for women who might be feeling that sense of, man, I've screwed up and there's, it's too big or it's too much or I'm too late?
That's such a good point, Gina. Somehow in midlife, we see the future in our children, we see the past in our parents, and we think, if I could have told my younger self these things, I would have told them. And oh my gosh, I don't want to have the same issues or problems my parents do. So it's a lot to take in, but it really isn't too late. Anything you can do now will solidify your financial future. So if it means putting some money into an IRA, even if it's $50 a month, if it means putting some money aside into an emergency fund, just set it up as an automatic monthly amount. You hear the expression, pay yourself first. It's true. If you wait till the end of the month, there's nothing left over. So make sure you get some money into some investment, something that you can put aside for your own future. You don't want to be living on that $1,300 a month Social Security check. That's just not a great future. And I think that we as women, we're so generous with our family, with our time, with our resources, with our money, that sometimes it is time to pull back and think about, what about me? What do I need to do for myself? It's money that is for me. It's not selfish. It is to solidify my finances in the future. When we're talking about money with friends and all, I love book clubs. And I've had this dream that there could be this personal finance book club, where people would get together and talk about these things a little more openly and share. Because once women get in the game, they really do a good job. There have been studies that when women do start investing, they do better than men. You just got to take those first steps and get in the game.
How about you, Peggy?
Well, I think that what I would like to see is a real change in attitudes about single people. And how do you do that? I mean, once you do that, then there's a whole raft of opportunities that open themselves up. But how do you dissolve this age-old attitude toward people having to get married? I think, it's one of these attitudes that's stuck, and people find it, convenient to pursue that. People want grandchildren and they want their kids to get married, and there's all this pressure. You should be married. There needs to be more discussion, I think, about this whole concept of individuality. In the end, it's up to you to don't just depend on someone else. Learn about finance. Encourage schools to teach children about finance. More programs. I have advocated that financial advisors put on programs for people in their communities, the free programs to make people more comfortable with the concept. I really think society has such a big role to, first of all, dispel this idea that there's anything wrong with single people, because people are going to end up being single, one at some point or the other. And secondly, this mystery surrounding finance for society at large has got to go, and it's an easy one to correct if people would just step up to the plate, in homes, in schools, in communities, and nationally. I'm very heartened by the fact that a number of states and localities have begun to require financial education to be part of curriculums, especially in high schools, which will will help a lot. That's an age when people really would begin to feel comfortable. It's not that easy when you're 55 to suddenly, oh, okay, let's discuss cryptocurrencies. You don't have the background for catching up. And so corrections can be made at all kinds of levels to help people, and should be done. And that's what I think needs to happen. It's
maybe that's your next iteration, ladies. Maybe you are going to be the ones that bring women together in an online forum and work them through these things in empowerment. How about that?
Great idea.
Yeah.
And then I'll join. So as we wrap up our time here together, I would love to have each of you share 3 key takeaways, anything that you really want women to take home, because I do believe that when something is overwhelming, it's hard for us to hear, like literally, physically, brain, hard to hear, because we're busy feeling the feeling that the word money, finances, investment, being single, if someone's married, the fear that can be coming in. So I want to call all the hearts back that might be thinking of all of the contingencies, and listen in to Jill and Peggy in these 3 takeaways. So this is, you don't have to get carried away in the waters that feel deep. So Jill, why don't I start with you? Just give me 3 key takeaways.
Sure. Number 1, I would say check your safety net. Society doesn't give you a good safety net. So make sure, put some money aside into an emergency fund. If you're working, get disability insurance. Just make sure that you're protected against an emergency. It will make you sleep so much better at night. The second thing is, it isn't too late. Don't despair. Don't be paralyzed by fear. Even small steps can make a big difference. Put aside a certain amount of money each month into an IRA, and then celebrate your success. Look at the statement at the end of the year and say, this is money that I put aside for my future. And my third one would be, don't be afraid of investing. Put some money into a no-load mutual fund. There are plenty of great ones out there. You don't have to get into cryptocurrency. You don't have to stick with savings accounts. Actually put some money into something that will grow over time. It's the only way you're going to stay ahead.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Peggy.
So besides our message about do your estate plan, I think more broadly, I personally like to tell people to make a budget that does reflect your income and your assets, but also takes into account funding for the things that are most important to you, to make sure you have those things. Money is there to make you happy. It's not endless. You have to be practical, but you want to have a good life. So provide for the life you want to have, and you can do that. And so I also think it's really important to do something that women don't do, which is talk to your friends about finances. It doesn't have to be deep ideas about whether thus and such a stock is a buy or sell today. It's about, what do you think about how to get a mortgage, or where do you ideas about, refinancing. Just talk to them about it. Or it could be about the stock market, but bring up the topic. You'd be amazed at, if somebody does bring it up, that the other person can be responsive to that, but they'll never bring it up themselves. So talk to your friends about finance in order to give yourself a comfort level about it. And then there's the nagging issues. All these surveys show that people's biggest worry, especially after a certain age, is having enough money to get them through retirement. And so plan ahead for that, so you're not in some sort of panic if you get to age 60 or something and you think, oh my God, what if I live to 93? You know, I'm going to be, you know, on the street somewhere. You don't have to. Think about budgeting for the future, where you want to live, perhaps when you're older. How much will that cost? How much will be left over for doing thus and such? Don't feel, by the way, you have to spend a fortune on the grandkids, and just make a budget that accounts for the important things lying ahead, and figure out how much, and it'll give you a comfort level that you've got this, if not perfectly nailed, then you've got a map for the future that can reduce anxieties about, oh my goodness, am I going to be on the street when I'm 74 and a half? So those would be my suggestions.
Awesome. Well, ladies, I want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your life experience, your passion for stepping in and helping single women navigate, really, the things that they have to navigate, because the world isn't set up to do it for them. And so that empowerment message is really important. So thank you, Peggy. Thank you, Jill, for coming on today and sharing that with my tribe.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Gina. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Where can people find you? Do you have a website?
We do. Our website is singlewomenandmoney.com, which happens to be the name of our book.
Perfect. All right. Friends, today I've been speaking with journalist Margaret-Price and financial planner Jill-Gianola. They are the co-authors of Single Women and Money, How to Live Well on Your Income. If you head over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 263, I will have links to them and their book. This is a sign, my friends. This is a reminder that you are worth the time it takes to learn about finances, myself included. It doesn't have to be scary. If we shift our mindset to curiosity and wonder and empowerment, we can make a change, and we can bring our friends along with us who may not want to talk about it. Think about starting a book club. Why not? Why not start a financial book club and help empower women in your community as we are now until things change, or if things don't change? How can we be that person of change like Jill and Peggy, who've written this book from their heart to help single women be empowered financially? Friends, thank you so much for being with us today. We look forward to sharing more encouraging, empowering messages with you in the weeks to come. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.